But outside the capital, Rolly hit provinces in the Bicol region woke up this morning to heavy damage. They say Ulysses is this year's worst. Utility services were also disrupted. Water concessionaires warn of rotational service interruptions. Meralco has yet to restore power in more than 1 million households. And in a hurried speech after the ASEAN Summit, President Rodrigo Duterte asserted that government is on top of the situation. He was then seen doing an aerial inspection. Let's begin with Typhoon Ulysses, bringing intense rainfall and heavy flooding in Metro Manila, Calabarzon, and the Bicol region, which have yet to recuperate from the onslaught of Rolly barely 2 weeks ago. Latest data from Pag-asa shows Ulysses has slightly weakened. It is moving westward over the West Philippine Sea. Located 200 kilometers west of Iba, Zambales, Ulysses is still expected to bring moderate to heavy rain over Cagayan, Isabela, Zambales, Bataan, Aurora, and Cavite, among others. Ulysses, along with the effects of the northeast monsoon or the Amihan, is expected to bring rough to very rough seas over the country's western seaboards, which makes sea travel risky for all types of vessels. The typhoon is seen to exit the Philippine area of responsibility by tomorrow afternoon. Meanwhile, tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 is raised over areas in the western portion of Pangasinan and Pampanga, Tarlac, Zambales, Bataan, and Lubang Island. Typhoon Ulysses reminded many Filipinos of Tropical Storm Ondoy, which ravaged parts of Luzon and Metro Manila more than a decade ago. But are the two weather disturbances all that similar? Patricia Mangune tells us.
With a continuous heavy downpour caused by Typhoon Ulysses overnight, flooding over Metro Manila and parts of Calabarzon were almost inevitable. And many residents couldn't help but compare this scenario to the one they grappled with back in 2009. But data from Weather Bureau Pag-asa showed that this year's Ulysses and 2009's Ondoy are two very different tropical cyclones. Ulysses was under the typhoon category and brought the heaviest rains in Tanay Rizal at 356 millimeters in 24 hours. Ondoy was at the weaker tropical storm category, but it poured up to 455 millimeters in Metro Manila.
Hangin kasi yung measure ng bagyo. So, hindi mo masusukat sa lakas ng hangin yung lakas ng ulan. So, hindi siya directly correlated. So, pwede pa rin na maraming ulan ang isang bagyo kahit mahina yung hangin niya.
However, rains from Ulysses caused massive flooding as they combined with the water from the Sierra Madre mountain range that was from previous tropical cyclones Quinta and Rolly. Rain waters then rushed down to the Marikina River, causing it to overflow.
Catch basin siya, kaya siya binahan ng ganun. Even before pa dumaan or maglandfall itong bagyo na si Ulysses sa may Quezon, kahapon pa lang ay nagpapaulan na dito sa may bahagi ng Quezon and Rizal and Laguna yung bagyo. So basang-basa yung lupa, hindi na kayang mag-absorb ng tubig. So diretso yung runoff patungo sa ilog.
Pag-asa said it will need to study the environmental conditions surrounding Sierra Madre to explain why it had little effect in weakening Typhoon Ulysses as it traversed across the mountains.
Kailangan din po munang i-analyze siguro after this, no? Kasi kailangan tignan yung environmental factors, ano yung mga dahilan kung bakit hindi nabasag or bakit parang minimal yung impact ng Sierra Madre dito sa organization nung bagyo.
Pag-asa clarified they have not made a miscalculation, nor have they fallen short at issuing immediate advisories to the public. This includes regular weather bulletins, rainfall warnings, and flooding projections. But to avoid confusion with technical terms, Pag-asa no longer incorporates the amount of rainfall expected.
Medyo tricky kasi yung paglabas niyan kasi every locality will have a different threshold value. Like for instance, dito sa Metro Manila, dahil puro tayo konkreto, mas mababa yung threshold natin. Halos walang lupa na sisipsip sa ano. Whereas in other places, yung mga more rural areas, ay mas mataas yung threshold. So we do away with using the values instead and just use the descriptive category to warn the people.
Actually, it's not
The Office of Civil Defense, which is the implementing arm of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, reiterated that they were prepared for the onslaught of Typhoon Ulysses and had military assets in Metro Manila deployed for rescue operations.
I guess, ma'am, it's not time for us to point fingers, no. Sorry to say that, but what we are focusing now is the conduct of the rescue operation.
UP Resilience Institute Executive Director Dr. Mahar Lagmay said LGUs can better prepare for the severe effects of flooding through hazard maps in every city or municipality.
We can make assumptions on what kind of increased rainfall to input and be able to simulate scenarios that are bigger than what people have experienced. It's more the responsibility of the national government to produce all of these maps for the country, no? The most advanced maps for the country.
For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Marikina River's water level has already receded after surpassing its peak during Tropical Storm Ondoy. As of 5:52 p.m., the river's water level is sitting at 19.6 meters. It rose to 22 meters at 10:33 a.m. That exceeds its 21.5-meter level during Ondoy in 2009. Binga, Magat, and the Angat Dam, meanwhile, commenced spilling operations in the afternoon. La Mesa Dam overflowed into the nearby Tulyahan River as early as 9:30 a.m. after breaching 80.15 meters from Ipo Dam. Manila Water, for its part, says many families in Marikina will spend another night in evacuation centers. For the details, Lynn Olivario joins us live. Lynn, what's the situation there?
Niño Elementary School in Marikina City. Many of them fled their homes earlier on Thursday as floodwaters covered the city. Majority of the evacuees will spend another night here, no longer take them in. The flood reached the second floor of their house. The Marikina Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office can't help us raged at midnight. MDRMO Chief Dave David says they were able to evacuate roughly 14,000 residents across the city overnight, and they're hoping that the Marikina River's water level will continue to subside in the coming days. More evacuees are expected to return to their homes once it goes down to 18 to 19 meters. Robbie, the MDRMO, says that rescue operations continue as there are still residents who opted to stay home that remain trapped. Robbie.
Now, Lynn, this emergency comes on top of a crisis, particularly COVID. How is physical distancing being implemented, particularly in evacuation centers?
Robbie, as far as I have observed here at the Santo Niño Elementary School where we're at, there are 2 families only in each classroom. And of course, there's no physical distancing as far as I saw among the members of the same family, but to divide them from members of a different family, there are chairs that are placed in such a way that they serve as a makeshift partition or a divider. Robbie.
Okay, in the meantime, how are the relief supplies and the operations? How are they getting the assistance they need from the various agencies?
Robbie, the MDRMO says they've already received a lot of help from various agencies, including the national government, the AFP, the Navy. Earlier, we saw the armed forces checking in to help them distribute relief goods, and also the members, the DRRMs rather, of other cities within Metro Manila have also extended their help, and also the MMDA. But what they really need right now are water assets. That's what they really need right now. And as far as the prepositioning of their food and non-food items, the Marikina Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office says they're still okay. Robbie.
Maraming salamat, Lynn Olivario, reporting live from Marikina City. We'll go for a quick break. When the big story returns, the scenes in Provident Village in Marikina were reminiscent of Ondoy back in 2009 with floodwater reaching as high as 10 feet. Marikina's mayor is putting the blame on poor dam management for the inundation. Find out why later. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. The city of Marikina is no stranger to intense floods as witnessed during the time of Typhoon Ondoy. But it seems even the local government was caught off guard this time with Typhoon Ulysses. Mayan Los Baños with this report.
Non-stop rains caused massive flooding in most parts of Marikina that's reminiscent of the damage from Typhoon Ondoy back in 2009. The entire stretch of A. Bonifacio was submerged in 6 to 7 feet of water, sinking parked cars and flooding most homes. Residents waded through neck-deep flood water as they tried to seek higher shelter and save their belongings. One resident even had to carry his bike. Along Marikina riverbanks, vendors tried in vain to save their merchandise. Michelle Gutierrez was able to save a bag full of electronic items, but most of her merchandise was already gone.
More on charger, power bank, speaker po yung mga nandun, mga headset, mga original headset. Yan po yung mga sayang naman. Ay, wala po tayong magagawa, ganun po talaga. Kapag hindi sinasadya po yung wala tayong magagawa.
One of the most badly hit areas in the city is Provident Village, which also saw heavy damage from the Typhoon Ondoy more than 10 years ago. Water reached more than 10 feet, making it difficult to rescue stranded villagers. TV5's rescue team was able to help this man who was being swept by the strong current. Rescuers had to use ropes to bring him to safety.
Kasi naabutan po kami ng ng biglang pagragos po ng tubig
Tapos?
Palabas po sana kami, punta po kami ng Cubao.
Yung bahay po ninyo, lumubog na?
Lumubog na po
With most homes gobbled up by flood, residents had to climb up the roofs to wait for rescue. But strong winds and rushing water made it a difficult endeavor. This rubber boat with rescued residents even had to be towed by a rescue vessel.
Tapos na, may sakit pa naman ako. High blood ako sa diabetes. Sinupong pa kahapon yung vertigo ko. Kaya talagang halo-halo na yung nagsisigaw na nga mga anak ko, rescue.
Marikina Mayor Marcy Teodoro said they did not expect the extent of damage caused by Typhoon Ulysses. Teodoro is now seeking help from the national government for rescue operations of residents that may still be stranded amid the flood. Reporting for News 5, Mayan Los Baños, we are One News.
Marikina Mayor Marcy Teodoro admits they did not anticipate floodwaters in the area to be this bad. Marikina River had risen to levels higher than it reached during Tropical Storm Ondoy in 2009. Several residents have been trapped on their roofs as floods continued to rise in the area. In an interview with One News, the mayor attributed all of this to nearby dams that released water. He points out shortcomings on the part of those managing the dams.
Yung isang area na kailangan natin ma-improve, lalo na dun sa mga namamahala ng dam natin o water resource management natin, na dapat maunawaan nila anumang tubig na pakakawalan nila ay magdudulot ng baha sa mga downstream community.
Barangay Tatalon returned to its usual state after the floodwaters resulting from Typhoon Ulysses onslaught subsided earlier than expected. To give us the updates, we have our correspondent Ria Fernandez reporting on the ground. Ria, anong lagay dyan?
Robbie, several houses here in Quezon City were affected by Ulysses-triggered floodwaters in the morning. But when afternoon came, it's as if nothing happened and life went on as usual.
Stores in Barangay Tatalon, Quezon City have immediately reopened. The river appeared to have become tranquil again, but it was a different story at around 11:30 a.m. Water from the river rushed, overflowing to nearby houses, some of which were flooded up to the second story. This was also the case in nearby Barangay Rojas, but many residents still refused to evacuate due to fear of getting infected with COVID-19. Jerome believes that aside from the risk of contracting the virus, staying in evacuation centers would not be beneficial.
Kung pupunta po kami sa evacuation center, ma'am, hindi naman po kami mabibigyan ng mga pagkain doon. Hindi po ganun kabilis. Like po dito, mag-uutos lang po kami. Tatawid lang po, tsaka crowded na po ang evacuation center. Baka magkaroon pa po ng sakit yung mga bata, lalo na po yung matatanda.
Delia, for her part, thinks that it's better to stay at home as long as it is not yet engulfed by flood.
Kasi yung Ondoy talagang lubog ang mga tao rito, ang mga bahay. Wala talagang nalilikasan. Kami dito, na kami sa baha, dito lang ho kami. Hindi ho kami lumilikas.
Officials appeal to their constituents to just do as they say.
Sundin nyo kami, hindi naman po para sa amin. Parang tentative kayo. Huwag po kayo mag-alala kasi yung mga empleyado pong maglilingkod sa inyo talagang nanggagaling din po sa mga flooded areas.
The LGU assured residents that strict health protocols have always been in place in 44 of their evacuation centers. Food and water supply will also be enough for everybody.
Robbie, authorities estimate that 4,000 families comprising at least 13,000 individuals from 57 barangays here in Quezon City were affected by Typhoon Ulysses. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Ria. That was Ria Fernandez reporting live from Quezon City. Metro Manila was unscathed when Super Typhoon Rolly hit, but it was a different story with Ulysses. Parts of Manila City were inundated. That's why residents crowded evacuation centers. Local authorities assure that health protocols are being implemented. Some families, however, refused to vacate. Some parents even left their children at home while they claimed food packs. The typhoon's strong winds also brought trash to the Dolomite Beach project in Manila Bay. In a now-deleted Facebook post, Environment Undersecretary Benny Antiporda uploaded photos with MMDA Assistant Secretary Celine Pialogo at the Manila Bay to show that the artificial white sand remains intact. The photos captioned, "Dolomite lang ang matatag," caught the ire of many netizens. In Potrero, Malabon, residents had to climb up their roofs or the second story of their houses due to neck-deep floodwater. Even when rescuers arrived, residents opted to wait out the typhoon. Some used improvised floaters made with plastic drums, styrofoam boards, and rubber tires. In Quezon City, a tree along EDSA Kamuning fell due to the strong winds, while roofing sheets in a construction site along Timog Avenue and scaffolding across a mall were toppled. Parked vehicles were not spared from the damage. According to the Quezon City LGU, more than 300 families from different barangays have been evacuated. We'll take another break. When we return, nasaan ang Pangulo once again trends as Ulysses pounded Luzon, but in a very quick address, the President insisted they are not sleeping on the situation. And irked by the constant warnings from the NDRRMC, authorities say it is mandated by law and it is for your own good. The details next. Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. President Duterte has conducted an aerial inspection of areas battered by Typhoon Ulysses. The chief executive monitored Marikina, Montalban, Pasig, and other flooded areas in Metro Manila. In a short address to the nation, the president assured the public that the government is on top of the situation. Hashtag Nasaan ang Pangulo once again flooded social media during the onslaught of Ulysses.
It's not that I am at a distance from you. Na may distansya ako ngayon sa inyo. Gusto kong pumunta doon, makipaglangoy nga sa inyo. Ang problema, pinipigilan ako. Kasi raw, pag namatay ako, isa lang ang presidente.
Prior to his aerial inspection, the president attended the virtual 37th ASEAN Summit in Hanoi, Vietnam, where he called for action against climate change. He asked to be momentarily excused from participating in the plenary session.
We must further enhance our cooperation on the disaster risk reduction management to reinforce our capacities both at the national and regional levels.
Many Filipinos are irritated by the warning messages of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council in light of Typhoon Ulysses' onslaught. In an interview with 1PH sa Totoo Lang, NDRRMC spokesman Mark Timbal apologized for any supposed inconvenience, primarily due to the loud notification sound. But Timbal stressed that the council is mandated by the Free Mobile Disaster Alerts Act to send warning messages to the public. The wave of complaints, meanwhile, did not sit well with former Defense Secretary and Senator Orly Mercado.
Yung manggagaling sa NDRRMC, I welcome that. Huwag kayong masyadong magre-reklamo. Tapos pag wala naman nag-warning sa inyo, sasabihin
magre-reklamo rin.
No, hindi man lang kami binigyan ng warning. O kaya mali ang warning.
Hundreds of families were trapped and had to be rescued as floodwaters caused by the typhoon submerged parts of San Mateo, Rizal. Reporting live, Maricel Halili gives us the latest.
Robbie, as the weather improves, flood in different barangays here in San Mateo, Rizal is beginning to subside. But with the evacuation center still packed, well, the problem is social distancing can hardly be imposed.
82-year-old Abelardo Josena looks lethargic as he sat at the corner of Central National High School in San Mateo, Rizal. With his wife and grandchild, Abelardo waited all night to be rescued from his flooded house. Using a floater, they were able to leave for the evacuation center this morning, but there was no room for them to stay.
Wala naman kami mapistuhan dahil sa punong-puno na eh. Kaya dito na lang kami muna magtitiis.
Tapos wala kayong nadalang gamit?
Oo, wala kami nadalang gamit.
The local government wants to limit the occupancy in evacuation centers to 4 families per room, but this proved to be a challenge. About 4,000 evacuees have been listed since last night. This included Eileen, who just gave birth to her 5th child a month ago.
Mahirap po kasi po dala-dala pa yung sanggol, tapos mga pamilya ko po, di maano. Hindi na po kami nagbis lahat. Nagpatayo na lang po ng umaga.
The San Mateo NDRRMO said Typhoon Ulysses poured more rainfall than Ondoy, but with lesser casualties.
Pagdating sa casualties, dahil po sa learnings na po natin from the past experiences po, kaya mas na-minimize po siguro yung damages and casualties and injuries po.
Meanwhile, many houses in Casiglahan village in Rodriguez, Rizal were covered with mud as flood water receded. Some residents said they did not expect the water to reach its critical level.
Hindi naman po namin nakalain na gano'n eh, kasi nung nakaraan hindi naman hanggang bintana lang po eh.
Akala ko nga hindi babaha ng malaki kasi yung dati po ng habagat hindi na po ganito. Kaya sabi ko hindi yan, hindi.
Ulysses reportedly left an 11-year-old casualty in Casiglahan village.
Robbie, some of the residents here in San Mateo Rizal went back to their houses earlier this afternoon to start cleaning up. But until this moment, the residents are still experiencing power outages and they still have problem in communication because of weak signal. But thankfully, the local government has not recorded any casualty. Robbie?
Maraming salamat, Maricel Halili, reporting live from San Mateo, Rizal. Before hammering Central Luzon and NCR, Typhoon Ulysses also barreled its way through other provinces in southern Luzon, causing more burden for those who have yet to recover from the wrath of Typhoon Rolly earlier this month. As early as last evening, Typhoon Ulysses brought strong winds and dumped heavy rain in Camarines Norte. Ulysses toppled electric posts and trees in the municipality of Labo, making it hard even for our news team to survey the area. This morning, residents woke up to see the full extent of the damage, with trees having fallen right on top of houses. It was a similar scenario in Camarines Sur. After nearly 10 hours of non-stop wind and rain, residents in at least 38 barangays have been affected, with some saying Ulysses was the worst among the recent typhoons. In Quezon, where the typhoon made landfall, several houses in areas like Poblacion in Infanta were submerged in flood. Some residents said they have not seen damage like this in more than a decade. Up in Pampanga, several line posts were brought down by Typhoon Ulysses, while some houses had their roofs nearly blown away. Knee-deep flood had also been reported in several areas, including in San Simon and Sasmuan. In Laguna, some 2,000 families in the province were affected, particularly those living in coastal areas near Laguna de Bay. Power outages were also reported in Laguna's 3rd and 4th districts. As of 2 p.m. today, Meralco said power has been restored to at least 1.3 million households. The power distributor said they are still working to bring back electricity to another 1.6 million households. Alagang Kapatid Foundation is calling for donations in aid of our kababayans affected by Typhoon Ulysses. You may send food items such as rice, canned goods, water, biscuits. You may also send banig, blankets, and tents, as well as body and laundry soaps, toothpaste, toothbrush, and sanitary napkins. Please send your in-kind donations to the drop-off centers right now being flashed on your screen. For cash donations, you may deposit any amount to these bank accounts with account name Alagang Kapatid Foundation Incorporated. The account numbers are being flashed on your screen. You may also send money through PayMaya. You may scan your QR code or visit paymaya.co/Alagang Kapatid. You may also find Alagang Kapatid Foundation in the Pay Bill section of the app. Just send a screenshot of the deposit or transaction slip to the Alagang Kapatid Foundation Facebook page. You may also email alagangkapatidfoundation@tv5.com.ph. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Stay safe. Good evening.